My name's Joshua Rowe, and I'm a photographer, both digital and film, so sorry guys. I think the first time I saw like anything with film was my dad, actually. So like my parents are separated, but when I was a kid, like went between both homes, and my dad was a big NASCAR fan. So we would go to NASCAR races all the time in New Jersey, and he would actually photograph that. I think the first time I started shooting outside of like point and shoot cameras as like a kid, but like really getting into it was in high school. Pretty much I'd been getting skateboarding magazines for a while. I was a skater, started looking into magazines, and I started kind of like paying attention a little bit more to photos and all of that. So I got like a little digital point and shoot, but I was like getting more into photography. And my mom finally was like willing to let me sign up for classes at Miracosa while I was still in high school. So I ended up taking a black and white 101 class, and that was like the first time I got to start shooting film. And it was cool because I was in high school and like, but going to like a college class, so I felt kind of cool like doing that. And then I would like bring it into school and like photograph at high school like with all that. And like we had skate PE, so I'd photograph my friends at skate PE and kind of get that exposure. Graininess that you see the grip, because it's like, it's really there. And I think, I guess it's more, I shouldn't say it's an aesthetic, it's the physicality of it. And that's something cool, because it's like, when you shoot a film photograph, at the end of the day, it's like, you're gonna end up with something that you can hold in your hand, whether it's like 120 millimeter, like a bigger square, or a little 35. It's like, you have this physical thing that you've created. And it's really cool because you like look at it, it looks all small, and then as you blow it up and you make prints, like you get these vibrant colors that come out. Like there's this kind of like, it turns into something. It's like you take this blank little slate and it comes out, and you have all these unique colors that are tied to it that are based on like whatever type of film it is. And I think that's cool because you can forever keep experimenting with it, because there's so many different little like techniques and tricks you can do. Film lets me slow down. I think that's probably the best way, because it makes me think about a little bit more of like what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to communicate with my photography. I think that's what's really nice, because I can get in the moment. And there's sometimes where I shoot through a bunch of film too, but I really prefer to spend time with the subject, if it's a person or if it's like an object that I'm shooting, and kind of experience where I'm at that time and get the feel of like what I'm trying to do. Because there's like some things I like to shoot a lot of like still life, I guess is the best way to put it, in architecture. And a lot of that means like you got to go there different times of the day, like really experience it and kind of see it. When I'm doing film, I try and remind myself, it's like, hey, like you get like 3 shots on this, like how's this gonna work? And it's like you kind of got to sit there, plan it out a little, but also like it makes me enjoy and embrace that moment a little bit more. I guess the 2 biggest things I like to photograph the most are, I like to document my time with my friends. And I think that in the sense of, one, it's for the memories, just to have all of that. But it's also something I think with film, and when it comes to photography too, it's like I have a group of friends that like to shoot photos, and it's those memories. Like the memory bank up here is only gonna last so long, and sometimes to have that physical thing that I can go and make prints from and share, and even like if I have kids one day to share that, or when we're older for us to look back on. Because I look at photography, like I like it on like going full creative art stuff, like that's always fun, but I do really like it as like a documentation of life, of my interactions with my friends. I do like both for different reasons and uses. Like I shoot digital just as much as I shoot film, if not like more now in digital, because I do it for professional work, but I also shoot a lot of band photography. I think they feed different needs. Like for film, I really love shooting that for, like I said, like my memories with friends, with projects that I'm working on. Like I'm working on this chair project, and to me, like that seems way more fitting as something that's going on film, because I really want that to have an impact. And film, no matter what, will always have a little bit more of an impact than digital a lot of the times, depending on like what you're photographing. So for me, definitely film, it goes towards like a lot more deeper, meaningful stuff. No, I don't think you can really, I shouldn't say that. You can make digital look like film, because I definitely know I have like tested that limits myself before and had people fully think that it's a film photo. That being said though, I think there's a degree of like, it shouldn't be done too much because film is like an art. It has its thing. It's like, there's like a whole science behind it to make like a roll of film, and then there's like testing like how you really want to develop it and like get it to look a certain way. But there's also something whenever you see a film photograph scanned, and especially like once you start shooting film a lot more, you can really tell like that's a film photograph. And it's just because like those color palettes that are there in certain types of film, you can always apply it to like a digital photo, but it's never quite right. It might like trick like the average person doesn't really know anything about that, but to me, like sometimes I've taken those qualities over to like a digital one, but I don't think like it'll never, to me, like when I look at it, it's never like a one-to-one like, oh, these are exactly the same. It's like film will always feel completely different than digital. Yeah, I definitely do. When I go into shooting film, pretty much when I'm doing that, it's coming from a deeper rooted place, I think. When I go through like digital, it's in the motion, it's quick, I feel comfortable with what I'm doing. Like if I'm shooting band stuff, I'm definitely like excited and connected with that, but it's not necessarily that deep to a certain extent. But when I go and shoot film, there's a lot more intention. I'm really trying to get a feel out of whatever I'm photographing, even if it's just a feel that like I only get out of it and maybe someone else who sees the photo doesn't get it. Actually, I think a really cool one to do, and it's something I like because we've talked about it here. Like one of my other neighbors is a photographer. We've always talked about photographing like everyone in their apartments here and stuff. And it's because like we're all like a really tight-knit community, but I think something that'd be cool because of like how we hold value to places to where we are now would be to go and photograph people in the places that they live now. So like whether it's an apartment, a house and all that, but then also like travel back with them to their home, like their childhood home. Whether it's like they get inside it or not, or out in the front, to be like the dichotomy of like where you started, where you're at now, and knowing that those places played a lot like in your life. Like there's something that wherever you grew up at, like that's, it defines you. Like there's a way that it comes through in your life in some mannerism or what your belief system is and stuff. And I think kind of connecting it to a home, even though it's like just this physical object, it's everything that happens inside that household, whether it's good or bad, is something that partly creates us. And it'd be cool to see like where you started, because that's essentially you being brought into a household that, yeah, you might have say in as like a kid in a certain sense, but like the design, the aesthetic and everything is from your parents or for whoever raised you. And then to like see how you're living now in the aesthetic that like you define yourself with, that like you're currently living in, would be really cool. Ooh, favorite film stock. I think right now, this is probably like a corny answer, but Portra like 160, it's just been so good with the colors. It's been super smooth, it looks great, and mainly I guess I'm picking that even because I'm terrible and I go between a bunch of film stock all the time and I've never been super consistent. But with that film, I've been trying to shoot with it a little bit more. But I'm friends with Christian Hicks, and that jerk shoots on that film so damn well, and every time he sends me photos from it, I get really jealous. I'm like, well, I'm just gonna start trying to shoot on that now because every photo he ever sends me is perfect. I'm like, I just want the consistency of those colors, so that's probably my favorite film stock right now. I don't even know if I have a favorite camera. I feel like I haven't experienced like enough cameras in the mix, but I'm shooting a Canon A1 right now, and that's been amazing. It's been really fun to shoot with just as a 35. It's enjoyable. I will say though, maybe one of my favorite ones for just like having it for a short time was like a Himatic, and like Minolta Himatic. Someone's probably gonna be mad that I don't know that one. That I borrowed from a neighbor to test it out for them. And it's made some of my favorite photos on there in just terms of like quick portraits and like as a point and shoot little like kind of like rangefinder to have on hand. So that might be my favorite one because it's just like in the moment, shoot, good to go, and it always turns out a good photo. Oh, dude, everyone should shoot film. I think, all right, I'm gonna go on the education side. It's like, it really teaches you how to be a good photographer. Anyone who I've met who I think is actually like a respectable photographer or really knows what they're doing has always shot film. It teaches you a lot of practices, how to be methodical, like when you're working with stuff, like you really want to try and get stuff right the first time. I would say the hardest part is really like when it comes to developing the film. It sucks like I don't get to develop it anymore. I always send it to a lab, but knowing how you shot something and how you want it to turn out when you get those scans back or you go to make like enlargements from it, the darkroom is quintessentially like what real, obviously like composition, knowing like how your film is, like how it reacts to certain lighting situations, what the color scheme is on it. All of that's massive into creating like a really proper like photograph. But the darkroom's really where you can go and take advantage of all that, and I think that's the hardest part. Yeah, I think one for sure off the top of my head is Jonathan Mehring. He's a skate photographer. He does a lot of other commercial work too and stuff, but he's the photographer that got me into becoming a photographer. He worked for this magazine called the Skateboarder magazine, or it was called Skateboarder Mag. It's not around anymore, but he did this trip. It came out, I think it's like the July or August issue of 2008 for them. And they did a skate trip on the Trans-Siberian Railroad with 4 skateboarders. So they started in Russia and went all the way to China to finish the trip. And every photograph from that just inspired me of like, it was one of those things when I read it as a kid, I just like went back and instantly started reading again. I was like in high school and like read it one more time. And I'm looking at this article of like 12, 14 pages and I'm like, I want to be a photographer. Oh, I think film photography is here to stay. I think the cool thing that's going on now is as we're trying to figure out with like film issues and all of that is more people are going to start kind of going off their own to try and make a film stock to start making it more accessible to kind of like bring the prices down. But the one thing I'm really excited for too is I think with the advent of like 3D printing and like a kind of like resurgence of everyone having a little bit more access to like mechanical engineering stuff or like building those skills is, as like a community of photographers and specifically like the film photography community, like everyone's gonna start kind of taking repairs into their own hands. And I think we're gonna kind of, we have to learn it. Like there's not enough people who can do all the repair stuff, but I think it's really cool too because that's like an art that's very much lost. And I think we're gonna see a really cool resurgence of people getting into making camera parts for cameras that aren't functioning anymore, like all these historic ones. But I'm kind of hoping too at the same time is that becomes more popular to kind of like self-repairs, that maybe people are going to kind of come on their own and start making like funkier cameras and start building their own like 35s and maybe like a medium format. Obviously that shit's super hard to do, like I can only imagine, but I think we can reach that point where we're going to start experimenting. We're going to see like new film cameras actually being made. I think that's going to be amazing. My name's Joshua Rowe, and I shoot film. Oh, I shot for way too long. That was 4 seconds. All right, one of my influences that I forgot is the ever amazing Amber Maloof, who shot that hawk shot. So look up her work if you haven't met her yet. It's the best.